happy Halloween.
It's already November.
Son of a bitch. Ooh, happy Veterans Day. It's that scary time of the year again, and one of my favorite things to do during this season is a playthrough of Luigi's Mansion. It's a wonderful game that is extremely spooky and atmospheric without actually crossing the line into being scary. The perfect way to get into that Halloween spirit while still remaining light and comfortable. It even includes a viewable trailer for Pikmin, adding to that fear factor. Now, I'd love to talk about Luigi's Mansion, but I really don't have much to say that hasn't been said. The ship of Luigi's Mansion discourse sailed so long ago that it brought smallpox to the Americas. The horse here is so dead that Calyrex could climb on and over-centralize a metagame. So rather than trying to give that horse one last beating, this year I decided I would try something a little bit different. But the question is, where else am I going to find a game about wandering a labyrinthine haunted house full of strange rooms with an unconventional weapon on Nintendo GameCube? Close enough. Welcome back, Luigi's Mansion. Monster House, my absolute favorite childhood trauma. This 2006 animated film about a sentient house that eats people terrified me as a kid. For years after I saw it, I was incapable of walking alone through my neighborhood at night, because for all I knew, any one of those houses could open its front door at any moment and snap me up in its tongue like a fucked up eldritch brick and mortar Yoshi. Now I'll spare you the multi-hour movie review here where I analyze it scene by scene and explain the deep symbolism behind Steve Buscemi being into fat women. Basically, there are these three kids, DJ, Chowder, and Jenny, who figure out that a house in their neighborhood is a monster.
Say that again?
The three plan to enter the house and kill it before it can eat a bunch of kids on Halloween. It's a pretty decent movie with a great sense of humor. I watch it almost every year around this time. But like every movie from the 2000s, of course, Monster House had to have a cheap tie-in game published by THQ, known for making basically nothing of quality ever. Now, I actually didn't play a whole lot of these tie-in games growing up. My dad was into video games himself, so he kinda guided me around the slop. Like for example, he stopped me from buying Pokemon Channel and instead got me Paper Mario 2. He's kind of a hero. Monster House, however, slipped through the cracks because my aunt bought it for me on a whim. And so, that fateful day, I popped it in my GameCube, loaded up the game. Yeah, this was like 6-year-old me's 9/11. The first thing you'll notice upon loading up Monster House is that it controls like a forgotten yogurt in your car's trunk on a hot summer's day. So let me explain. When you're playing, say, Mario Sunshine, when you press left on your control stick, Mario will start moving to the left. This is true in most video games, actually. Monster House for GameCube, however, decided that left should, in fact, not mean left. It should mean rotate left. That's right, you control this child with a water gun like you're driving a tank. It's about as graceful as taking classic Mario Party 6 minigame Tricky Tires and turning it into an entire video game. Now, the basic gameplay loop of Monster House is pretty simple. You walk into a new room and solve a puzzle for babies while periodically being interrupted by enemies, whose sole purpose is to turn a 30-second task into a multi-minute slog. It's kinda like if your job was to stock grocery store shelves, but in between every item you put out, you were set upon by a horde of mischievous magical goblins who pelt rocks at you until you kick them away. As far as enemies go, you've got sentient chairs, lamps, floorboards, radiators, and that's about it actually. So yeah, basically everything a home needs. There are a couple of mini-boss level threats out there too, but I think all told there are like 8 enemies in this game, which is not a lot when the bulk of your time is going to be spent shattering solid wooden and steel furniture with your insane child strength. Combat in this game is fairly simple. Basically, you use the X button to lock onto an enemy, which is incredibly finicky and barely functions when you're surrounded by multiple enemies. And of course, that's this game's idea of difficulty since the enemies themselves barely scale. You then spam the A button on the nearest enemy until it dies, then you reload with the B button and spam A at the next enemy, rinse and repeat. So yeah, Pikmin 4, but the grub chucker is a lamp. One thing that you'll immediately notice is that this house is unreasonably fucking huge. Like, this lot is about as wide as any standard suburban home. If we're being generous, the Monster House is probably only like 2,500 square feet, and yet it has this massive open concept kitchen, a huge foyer, hallways that wind around to who the fuck knows where, fancy offices and studies, like a dozen bathrooms, which are all safe rooms by the way, and even a library with this Scooby-Doo ass secret door. How Old Man Nevercracker managed to build an anomaly in the fabric of space-time on the budget of military retirement and VA benefits is a question that our greatest Monster House scientists are still trying to answer. So you go through a couple of rooms to get started, and Sorry, I was just pissing myself. Anyways, you go through a couple of rooms to get started, and as you approach some arbitrary door, your perspective suddenly and awkwardly shifts to Jenny, who we're now in control of for roughly 2 minutes. I guess now is a good time to explain. Monster House goes the extra mile over some garbage like Luigi's Mansion by having triple the playable characters. You'll note that this is only one less playable character than Yakuza 4, showing just how far video games have come since Luigi's Mansion. DJ, Jenny, and Chowder have a basic moveset concept in common. First of all, they all have water guns as their primary mode of attack. In the movie, I figured the reason they brought water guns was just because they're stupid kids and this is their idea of self-defense, but here in the game, no, apparently this was the right choice, because these water guns are capable of shattering hardwood flooring and destroying steel radiators. Alongside their water gun, each character is also packing a melee attack, mapped to the right trigger because hell is real and we're living in it, as well as a unique special weapon mapped to the Y button. Allow me to now explain the deep intricacies of each Monster House character's unique playstyle. DJ is kind of the all-around generalist. He has a semi-automatic water gun, a sweeping melee attack with said gun, and a camera, with which he can use the flash to disorient the inanimate objects. Yeah, that checks out. Next up you have Jenny, who's more about speed and precision. She's the high skill ceiling character. Her water gun fires a 3-round burst, her melee attack is a swift kick, and her special weapon is a slingshot that does heavy damage, but also just might not work because the lock-on in this game doesn't particularly like to function. Finally, Chowder is more of your bruiser type. He has a fucking shotgun, a big overhead swing for his melee attack, and water balloons that function as heavy damage AoEs. Now to put this in perspective for my Fire Emblem audience, DJ is like a paladin, Jenny is your swordmaster, and Chowder is a berserker. For my Pokemon audience, DJ is like Nidoking, Jenny is an Inteleon, and Chowder is Rampardos, I guess. For my 5 Sonic viewers, Team Monster House and Sonic Heroes would be DJ as speed, Chowder as power, and Jenny as fly. And for my Super Monkey Ball audience...
Dude, you like Super Monkey Ball? Pim. Bro, I knew I liked you, dude. Come here, bring it out.
Anyways, your first Chowder gameplay section starts out in this greenhouse that is clearly not attached to the house. You can't see it anywhere in the movie, and it's also very clearly not there in the game when we see the house from the outside. This is the kind of shit that keeps me up at night. You have to use a lot of this game's janky-ass dodge mechanic in this section to avoid some flying plants. You can either hold the L button while standing still to crouch, or you can press L and a direction to do a dodge that feels so clunky and awful it gives the devs of Pokemon Legends ZA a run for their money. The awesome part about this section, which is already chapter 2 by the way, this game is very short, is that we're like 15 minutes into the game and content is already being recycled. The last room you play through with Chowder before the control shifts back to DJ for a bit is the kitchen, a completely identical but separate kitchen from where DJ just was. During this DJ section, you make your way down to the house's stomach, where you can find the remains of the police car the kids were eaten in. Next to it is the radio, which you can use to call Skull, the guy from that one scene. You know the one. Up on the D-pad is dedicated entirely to this feature. You would think this would be like a Navi type thing for if you're stuck, but no, he kind of just says shit.
The first rule to winning is don't lose.
Now I think some of it might be vaguely alluding to things that happen in the game. The line about the pianist and the piano here sounds kinda like it was meant for this room a while back, where you shoot a piano to stop this infinitely reviving red chair, but this happens before you get the radio. This is just a random thing he can say when you press up on the D-pad, well after it would have been relevant. Maybe this is some kind of scrapped feature, like he was supposed to chime in and tell you what you're doing if you're stuck, but then they just relegated him to schizophrenic musings? I don't know, man. Next up is one of my least favorite sections of this entire game. You make your way down to the laundry room, and before you can move on to the next room, the delightfully whimsical doorknob of mischief just flies off on its own accord and gets stuck on top of this wardrobe. Now the game very specifically wants you to use this fuck-ass crate to climb up, because as we'll soon see, pushing a crate to a specific location to climb on is one of like 3 mechanics they designed for this game, and the devs intend to milk it until its teats are reduced to their component atoms. To add insult to injury, they literally placed it right next to a ladder. It's not like ladders are that heavy. If DJ is strong enough to lug this crate, he's definitely strong enough to drag this ladder. And the worst part is, the ladder, it's not important. It's not used for anything else. All they had to do was just not model the ladder, and this wouldn't be an issue. They did extra work to make the game make less sense. Fuck. So to get the crate down, naturally, you need to turn on these 2 washing machines next to the shelf it's on, because that's definitely intuitive. I look at this giant, heavy crate placed squarely on the shelf and think, Oh yeah, the subtle vibration of these two washing machines would knock this and only this to the floor. Not the paint can placed precariously on its side on the same shelf, not this top-heavy vase on the ground right next to the washing machine. Nope, just the solid crate. Especially since so few things in this game are interactable, why on earth would anyone think to turn on these washing machines? And this just makes the ladder thing even worse, because if the washing machines are interactable, why the hell isn't the ladder? The ladder is the obvious solution to something being stuck in a high place. Why would you put interactable things in this room right next to the ladder? The ladder is begging to be addressed. It even starts shaking when the laundry turns on. It does something. Why can you not use it? Did they just not have time to implement ladder mechanics? Okay, but moving on, then you have to slowly drag this stupid box across the room, which is an extremely simple task. So the devs have to make it interesting, in gigantic air quotes, by just dropping chairs from the ceiling to attack you between every few seconds of progress. And this doesn't even make sense, because at least before, you were being attacked by chairs in places there were already pre-existing chairs. These just get spawned in to pad out the game's runtime. And we're still not done with my least favorite part, because after a brief walk through a hallway and a furnace room, we're now back to box pushing hell. Twice in the same room. When you finally get the second box to its spot, your reward is a ladder. Actually, despite the fact that DJ could very obviously just reach up and grab this ladder, you need to find a hook to pull it down. Nope, you can't use your arms or move any of these boxes to give you some extra height. Nope, you very specifically need the hook. Well, okay, where's the hook? Maybe in this whole secret area behind the shelves they took the time to program an entire crawling interaction for? Nope, just a hidden monkey that gives you a piece of concept art. Okay, fine. Let's retrace our steps. In fact, let's retrace them all the way back to the laundry room. There's a locked box in here that wasn't relevant at all during the entire laundry room segment, so it's probably in here. But where's the key for this thing? I wandered back and forth through these 4 rooms looking for it for like 10 whole minutes, which is a lot when my footage for the entire playthrough of this game is less than 3 hours. I googled it. I scoured the Monster House wiki. I even resorted to a YouTube walkthrough so old that I could have left a 5-star rating and a video response. No dice. Nothing about this damn hook. At my wit's end, I finally just decided to scour the rooms inch by inch, determined to miss absolutely nothing. And of course, that's when I finally found the key in this random fucking vase in the furnace room. Keep in mind, most destructible objects have nothing in them. Some of them have sodas to restore your health, and some of them have tokens for the arcade game you can play on the main menu, but this is the only one in the entire game that contains any kind of item required for progression. And of course, this is all just so you can backtrack to the laundry room that you were just in to open a chest that gets you what is essentially a key for the room you had to walk back from. And the hook just lowers the ladder by like a foot, which he could have done by just reaching up and grabbing it. Anyways, this marks the start of chapter 3, the second floor, which begins probably like the best leg of the game. That isn't saying much, but there's like something here. There's some really neat stuff going on in this first room as you walk through doors that lead to the same room you were just in, only with gravity and perspective shifted. It kind of reminds me of Sue P's room from Luigi's Mansion, which is neat. Granted, it doesn't really line up with Monster House's concept the same way it does with Luigi's Mansion, since Monster House is just supposed to be a house whose rooms, furnishings, and features mimic parts of a body since the physical house itself is possessed. It's not like Luigi's Mansion where the mansion itself is a paranormal illusion that can be manipulated by ghosts to make freaky shit happen. This is literally just a possessed house with body parts, like the rug is the tongue, the windows are eyes, the back door is the asshole. Speaking of lore consistency, DJ then just steps into a fireplace and teleports to a new room. Jenny makes her way to this bathroom, which is a safe zone of course, like the others, but there's this really creepy sound of a woman crying in here, which is actually kind of unsettling. Man, the only thing that can make this creepier is the return of that TV monster. The fight against this unreasonably creepy TV monster aside, this room is actually a little bit spooky. The crying sound is still audible throughout the entire encounter, the room and everything in it is shaking violently, and the cacophony is kind of overwhelming and a little bit anxiety-inducing. We're definitely still not in scary territory exactly, but Child Me never beat this game for a reason. In fact, the main reason Child Me put this game down forever is in the next room, one of only 2 bosses in this entire game. This creepy fucked up mannequin chandelier monster possessed by Nevercracker's dead wife. Why the hell does he have this? Is this like a Fire Emblem Sacred Stones Orson situation? Is Steve Buscemi fucking that fat mannequin? The fight against Mega Chandelure is more or less a waiting game. You dodge an attack or two, the chandelier stops spinning, you take out a light bulb, rinse, repeat. I think this is the only instance in the entire game where you actually have to use the dodge button, either crouching below her swing attack or dodging away from her shock attack. The boss ends with a cutscene quicktime event, like all good things do, really, before the ghost slithers away through the floor like fucking King Boom Boo. Control switches back to DJ for a little bit, and he becomes the most broken character in Monster House history by getting a water stream upgrade that lets you hold down A to completely trivialize half the enemies in the game. He is then promptly sucked into the bed anus. After the attic, we're finally given control of Chowder for a substantive amount of time in the depths? This house is a fucking tunnel system with canals? This nightmare labyrinth is where you learn that Chowder is in fact incredibly clunky to play as, or clunkier than usual in this game, I guess. Generally, in Monster House, you kinda just wanna hang back and spam shots at the enemies, because getting up close is how you take damage and die. Chowder's whole thing, however, is having a shotgun, meaning he does the most damage up close, where you can hit the enemies with the most shots from your spread. This is also the point where the game just starts throwing huge groups of enemies at you over and over again in the same room as difficulty. So playing as the clunkiest character here really hurts. His one saving grace is his water balloons, which do really good damage in an area of effect. But you can only hold 5 of those at once, and once those are out, you're kinda shit out of luck. You're also introduced to air vents here, which are by far the worst enemies in this game. Not because they're particularly difficult to deal with, they kinda just sit there while you pelt them with shots and water balloons. The problem is that they take an eternity to die, and I'm not sure if that's because they have an unreasonable amount of health, or if the barely functional lock-on is just causing them to not take damage. With the absolute slog of Chowder's section behind us, we finally get the emotional reunion we've been waiting for in this weird circus section of the house. Jenny feels really refreshing to play as after being stuck with Chowder for so long, and he's back. That was like 2 minutes. Nevercracker's basement is also apparently just full of a bunch of letter blocks, like the toys for children, but huge. I think this is supposed to be the stash of toys that Nevercracker has stolen from kids over the years, but I don't see why kids keep just throwing blocks with the letter V onto his lawn. Just for good measure, there's also one more fight against the stupid-ass vents in this section. Here you can see me getting wobbled by the HVAC climbers over here in real time. Chowder finally makes his way to the circus section, and with that, we're finally just about done. There's another weird puzzle where you have to go between rooms and find eyes and a nose for this clown to open up some gates, and there's also like weird clown mummies down here just for decoration. In fact, why is any of this down here? Constance, the lady haunting the house, was rescued from a circus. The only thing Nevercracker takes from the circus in the movie is the cage she's in, because she couldn't fit in the car. Why would either of them have a massive collection of circus memorabilia? Like, why would you want that? Why is there this bizarre clown puzzle to get to Constance's body? Why would you build an elaborate Zelda dungeon to hide your Titanic wife's corpse? So anyways, Constance's skeleton just randomly shows the kids a PowerPoint presentation of her life story. Since Nevercracker is the one who explains that in the movie, and THQ didn't have the budget to get Steve Buscemi. Finally reunited, the kids try to put out the furnace that is supposed to be the house's heart, but it doesn't do anything, and of fucking course, they get separated again, one last time for good measure, just to pad out this shit a little bit longer. Now you're tasked with running through basically every room in the house again, but this time completely inundated with chairs. Now you don't actually have to kill all of the enemies in each room, you can kind of just sidle past them and get to the door. But the problem is that doing this is a huge trap, because you will get stuck on a group of enemies, and then you will die and have to redo that character's entire escape from the beginning. Or you can just get caught in a completely untelegraphed quicktime event when you could very easily be pressing another button for normal gameplay, thus counting as a failure and giving you an instant loss, so you have to restart the section anyways. Fuck! After one final sprint through basically the entire house, the kids finally get coughed up onto the lawn, only for the house to wake up and start chasing them down the street. Just like in the movie, only without Steve Buscemi, which is kinda important because Nevercracker being present is kind of the inciting incident for this entire sequence and the emotional glue holding the entire ending together, but okay, whatever, fine, sure. Here we are, Chapter 8, The Chase, a 4-minute long QuickTime event. Finally, the house is lured into the quarry, where the final boss begins. Chowder and a front loader versus Monster House. In true Monster House for GameCube fashion, this fight immediately broke and refused to function on my first attempt. The house was invincible, and also I could drive right through it. Thankfully, after a quick reload, it decided to work. All you really do in this fight is wait for the house to attack, then move in and mash the attack button for a few seconds until it's time to dodge the next one. Then you blow up the house in one last QuickTime event, and bam. the game is finally over. You get one more slideshow cutscene where Old Man Nevercracker was apparently just there the whole time, but he didn't say anything or do anything or even appear on screen. Also, he looks really off-model here. Why is he Emperor Palpatine? Okay, I have to talk about the plot of this game. I've put it off long enough. So you'd think the plot would just be the plot of the movie, right? Like, that's what these tie-in games usually are. I mean, it's right there. It's the whole point of making one of them. But no, surprisingly, not really. Absolutely none of what happens in the game happens in the movie. The kids are in the house for like 10 minutes tops in the movie. They get eaten, there's this line about the uvula, they fall into the basement, they discover Constance's body, and then they get vomited out. Aside from the very abridged ending that is missing every single emotional beat, because again, they couldn't afford Steve Buscemi, the entire game is fan fiction. The movie is nothing like this. There are no chairs, no lamps, no weird haunted flip-flopped rooms, no obese mannequin that might be a sex doll, no complex system of caverns below the house. Hell, there are no rooms really shown outside of the foyer. I don't know, man. Look, usually I have some kind of conclusion to my videos where I try to put a positive spin on things, but I don't really know what to tell you. I just spent 3 hours of my life that I'll never get back playing fucking Monster House for GameCube. The gameplay sucks, the environments are ugly, and it doesn't even come with a trailer for Pikmin. Now I'm just tired, bored, and most of all, overwhelmed with my renewed phobia of any and all domiciles. Well, thank God there's only one house in this game. Oh, who is it?
Luigi.